In the infinite silence of deep space, something impossible appeared, a faint glimmer, a moving point of light, traveling faster than anything ever recorded. It wasn't a comet. It wasn't an asteroid. It was something else, something that didn't belong. NASA's instruments couldn't explain it. Harvard's brightest minds couldn't model it. And the deeper they looked, the stranger it became. Because this object, known as 3I/ATLAS, wasn't just moving through space, it was rewriting the laws of physics as it went. What is it? Where did it come from? And why does it behave like something built, not born? Stay with this story, because what NASA and Harvard just discovered might change everything humanity knows about the universe. The discovery, it began quietly, on a cold night in Hawaii. The Atlas Observatory was scanning the sky when astronomers noticed a strange object streaking across the darkness. It was moving too fast, reflecting sunlight in a way no natural body should. At first, they thought it was a comet, but comets have tails, trails of gas and dust, that glow as they approach the sun. This one didn't. Then they thought it might be an asteroid, but asteroids follow predictable orbits. This one didn't. Its path was hyperbolic, meaning it wasn't bound to the sun. It came from outside the solar system, and it was leaving again. They named it 3I/ATLAS, the third known interstellar visitor after Oumuamua in 2017 and 2I/Borisov in 2019. But this one was different. The impossible motion. When scientists plotted its trajectory, they noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. 3I/ATLAS wasn't just passing through, it was accelerating. Objects in space don't speed up without a reason. Gravity pulls, friction slows, but nothing accelerates on its own. Yet 3I/ATLAS did. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory confirmed the anomaly. The object was gaining velocity as it moved away from the sun, as if something invisible was pushing it. But there was no visible jet, no outgassing, no debris. It was moving like a spacecraft, not a rock. The Harvard connection. At Harvard University, astrophysicist Avi Loeb had seen this before. Back in 2017, he had studied Oumuamua, the first interstellar object ever detected. It too had accelerated mysteriously. Loeb proposed a radical idea, that Oumuamua might be artificial. A fragment of alien technology, perhaps a solar sail, propelled by light itself. The scientific community dismissed it as speculation. But now, with 3I/ATLAS showing the same behavior, Loeb's theory didn't seem so far-fetched. Could it be that another interstellar object, from the same origin, had entered our solar system? The composition mystery spectroscopic analysis revealed something even stranger. 3I/ATLAS reflected light in a way that didn't match any known material. Its surface was unusually bright, almost metallic, but without the spectral fingerprints of metal. It wasn't ice, rock, or dust. It was something else. Some researchers suggested it might be composed of exotic carbon compounds, materials that could only form under extreme conditions, like the surface of a neutron star. Others proposed it was hollow, a shell, not a solid body. If true, that would explain its acceleration. A thin, reflective structure could be pushed by solar radiation, just like a sail. The motion that broke the model, NASA's orbital simulations couldn't make sense of it. Every time they tried to model 3I/ATLAS's path, the data broke the equations. It wasn't just moving faster than expected. It was changing direction slightly, as if adjusting its course. Natural objects don't do that, but spacecraft do. The possibility was unsettling. If 3I/ATLAS was artificial, it meant something, or someone, had built it. And it had traveled light years to reach us, the echo of Oumuamua. When scientists compared the data from 3I/ATLAS to Oumuamua, the similarities were undeniable. Both entered the solar system from interstellar space. Both accelerated without visible propulsion. Both had unusual shapes and reflectivity, but there was one key difference. Oumuamua was silent. It passed by before we could study it closely. 3I/ATLAS, however, lingered. Its trajectory brought it closer to Earth's orbit, giving astronomers a rare chance to observe it in detail, and what they found deepened the mystery. The signal, in early observations, radio telescopes detected faint, periodic fluctuations in the object's reflected light. At first, scientists thought it was rotation, the object spinning as it traveled, but the pattern wasn't consistent with a natural spin. It was rhythmic, repeating, almost like a signal. The SETI Institute, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, began monitoring it. They didn't detect any artificial transmissions, but the optical pattern persisted. It was as if the object was pulsing, not randomly, but deliberately. The Harvard-NASA collaboration. For the first time, Harvard and NASA joined forces to study an interstellar object in real time. Using data from the Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, and ground-based observatories, they built a 3D model of 3I/ATLAS. The results were shocking. The object wasn't spherical or irregular like a rock. It was elongated, thin, flat, and possibly reflective. It looked eerily similar to a solar sail, a concept humans have only begun to experiment with. The energy mystery. If 3I/ATLAS was being propelled by sunlight, its acceleration should have matched the intensity of solar radiation. But it didn't. It was accelerating faster than light pressure could explain. That meant one of two things. Either our understanding of physics was incomplete, or the object was using an unknown form of propulsion. Some theorists suggested it might be harnessing quantum vacuum energy, the energy that exists even in empty space. If true, it would mean 3I/ATLAS was powered by the fabric of the universe itself. The origin question. Where did it come from? Tracing its trajectory backward, scientists found that 3I/ATLAS likely originated from the direction of the constellation Lyra, the same region from which Oumuamua had come. Two interstellar objects from the same direction, both defying physics. Coincidence or connection? If they were fragments of the same structure or probes from the same civilization, it would mean something extraordinary. We are being visited, not once, but repeatedly. The theories. The scientific community split into camps. Some argued that 3I/ATLAS was a natural fragment, a piece of a shattered exoplanet flung into interstellar space. Others believed it was a relic, a technological artifact, perhaps millions of years old, drifting between stars. A few went further, suggesting it might be a Bracewell probe, an autonomous messenger designed to explore and transmit data across galaxies. If that were true, 3I/ATLAS might not just be passing through, it might be watching. The data that changed everything. As the object moved farther from the sun, its acceleration increased, not decreased. That was impossible. Solar radiation weakens with distance. Yet 3I/ATLAS was speeding up. NASA's instruments recorded a faint energy signature, a low-frequency emission unlike anything seen before. It wasn't radio, it wasn't thermal, it was something else, a frequency that didn't match any known natural process. The hidden geometry. When scientists mapped the object's light curve, the way it reflected sunlight, they noticed repeating geometric patterns, triangles, hexagons, perfect symmetry. Nature doesn't build perfect geometry at this scale, but intelligence does. The data hinted at a structured surface, panels, edges, maybe even compartments. It was as if the object had been designed. The silence from NASA. Then, suddenly, NASA went quiet. Public updates stopped. Data streams were delayed. Independent astronomers noticed that several observation windows were closed without explanation. When questioned, NASA officials said the data was under review. But behind closed doors, something was happening. Harvard researchers confirmed that new readings from the James Webb Telescope had detected spectral anomalies, traces of elements not found in any known asteroid or comet. The leak weeks later, an internal memo surfaced online. It claimed that 3I/ATLAS emitted bursts of infrared radiation, short, controlled pulses, consistent with energy modulation. In other words, it wasn't just reflecting light, it was generating it. If true, that meant 3I/ATLAS wasn't a passive object, it was active. The pulse weeks after the first detection, astronomers noticed that the object's brightness wasn't constant. It pulsed, faintly, rhythmically, every 16 hours. At first they thought it was tumbling, reflecting sunlight as it rotated. But the pattern was too precise. The intervals were exact, down to the millisecond. Natural rotation is never that perfect. When the data was filtered, the light curve revealed something even stranger. A secondary pulse, offset by a fraction of a second, like an echo. It was as if the object was sending out a signal and then responding to itself. NASA's Deep Space Network began monitoring it continuously. The pulses continued, unwavering, even as the object moved farther from the sun. And then, one night, the rhythm changed. The pulses slowed, then sped up, then stopped altogether. For 48 hours, 3I/ATLAS went completely dark. Then, without warning, it flared, brighter than ever before, releasing a burst of energy that saturated every telescope pointed at it. When the light faded, the object's trajectory had changed again. It had turned. The turn objects in space don't turn. They follow gravity, inertia, and momentum. But 3I/ATLAS had shifted its course. Not by accident, but with precision. Its new path wasn't random. It was heading toward the ecliptic plane, the flat, disk-like region where most of the planets orbit the sun. In other words, it was moving toward us. NASA's tracking systems confirmed the change. The object's velocity increased slightly, but its direction was unmistakable. It was coming closer to Earth's orbital path. The discovery sent shock waves through the scientific community. If it was natural, it was the most bizarre gravitational interaction ever recorded. If it wasn't, then something had just made a decision. The debate emergency meetings were held between NASA, the European Space Agency, and Harvard's astrophysics department. Some argued that the trajectory change was an illusion, a trick of perspective caused by solar radiation pressure. Others weren't so sure. Dr. Elaine Porter, a senior researcher at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, reviewed the data and found something chilling. The object's acceleration wasn't smooth. It came in bursts, short, controlled surges of speed, followed by steady glides. That's not how natural forces behave. That's how engines behave. When she presented her findings, the room fell silent. If 3I/ATLAS was using propulsion, it wasn't a rock. It was a craft. The hidden frequency. While NASA debated, a small team at Harvard continued to analyze the faint energy emissions detected weeks earlier. They discovered that the low-frequency signal wasn't random noise. It had structure, repeating intervals, harmonic layers, and modulation patterns. When converted into audio, it sounded like a deep, resonant hum, almost mechanical. But when the signal was sped up 10,000 times, something extraordinary happened. It formed a pattern, a sequence of tones that repeated in mathematical ratios, the same ratios found in the Fibonacci sequence, the same ratios that appeared in the object's spiral trajectory. It was as if the object was communicating, not in language, but in mathematics. The public leak. Then the inevitable happened. A data technician at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory leaked a portion of the internal report to an online forum. Within hours, the story went viral. NASA hiding alien probe, the headlines screamed. The agency denied the claims, calling the leak misinterpreted data. But the damage was done. Independent astronomers confirmed the strange acceleration and the rhythmic light pulses. Amateur radio operators even claimed to detect faint echoes of the low-frequency hum. The world was watching, and 3I/ATLAS kept moving closer. The encounter window. By mid-year, the object's projected path showed it would pass within 0.3 astronomical units of Earth, closer than Mars. That proximity meant one thing. For a brief window, humanity would have its best chance to study an interstellar object up close. NASA scrambled to prepare. The James Webb Space Telescope was reoriented. The Hubble was recalibrated. Even the aging Voyager probes were instructed to listen for any unusual signals. Harvard's team proposed a bold plan to send a high-powered laser pulse toward 3I/A TLAS, encoded with a mathematical message. The message was simple: "We see you." The pulse was transmitted. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th day, the object responded. The response. It wasn't a radio signal. It wasn't light. It was gravity. Sensitive instruments on Earth detected a faint, localized fluctuation in the gravitational field, a ripple, as if space itself had been disturbed. The timing matched the laser transmission exactly. It was as if 3I/A TLAS had answered, not with sound or light, but by bending the fabric of space. The phenomenon lasted only seconds, but it was enough to send physicists into chaos. If the readings were real, it meant the object could manipulate gravity, something far beyond human technology. And if it could manipulate gravity, it could travel anywhere. The silence. Then, just as suddenly as it had turned toward Earth, 3I/A TLAS changed course again. It veered upward, away from the ecliptic plane, accelerating faster than ever before. Within days, it was moving beyond the orbit of Jupiter. Within weeks, it was gone, fading into the blackness of interstellar space. No signal, no reflection, no trace. It had come, it had looked, and it had left. The aftermath months later, the data was still being analyzed. Every model, every simulation, every theory failed to explain what had happened. The gravitational pulse, the acceleration bursts, the perfect geometry. It all pointed to one conclusion: 3I/A TLAS was not a natural object. But if it wasn't natural, then what was it? A probe, a messenger, a relic from a civilization older than our sun, or something else entirely, something that exists beyond our understanding of physics? The legacy. Harvard's Avi Loeb published a paper arguing that 3I/A TLAS was likely artificial, a technological artifact from another star system. NASA refused to endorse the claim, but quietly, several of its scientists admitted that the data defied every known explanation. The object had come from the same region of space as Oumuamua. It had behaved in the same impossible ways, and it had responded, deliberately, to a human signal. The implications were staggering. If 3I/A TLAS was a probe, it meant we were being observed. If it was a relic, it meant civilizations had existed long before us. And if it was something else, something alive, then the universe was far stranger than we could ever imagine. The final question. Years later, as the data faded into archives and the headlines disappeared, one question remained. Why did it come here? Was it curiosity, observation, a test? Or was it something deeper? A message written not in words, but in motion, geometry, and light. Whatever the answer, one truth remained. 3I/A TLAS had defied every law of physics we know. And somewhere out there in the dark, it's still moving, silent, precise, unstoppable. It came once, it may come again, and when it does, the universe will never be the same.